Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, 1 star. Bang dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. This is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. And cars broke down, I missed the bus, there runs a 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right under Jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just the perfect day. It's just the perfect day. Na, 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 na,
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to another exciting episode of Eggs. This is our first time in a long time. It's just me and Mike here. We're going to have a little conversation and get caught up, reacquainted.
Yeah, it's actually kind of nice. We haven't done this in a long time. It's just been guest after guest after guest, and we haven't had the opportunity until now.
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of those things. It's like a gift and a curse, right? I mean, we're really grateful for all the guests that come on. But, both of us are busy and we have tight schedules and stuff. And so we have limited amount of time that we can actually just do something like this together. So I'm grateful to have it today and, first time, long time. So just before we got on the call, Mike was starting to ask me about my home issue. So maybe what I'll do is enlighten everybody on what's been going on here around the house and we can have a little chat about that. So essentially what happened is and it's funny because everybody I've told the story to goes, oh yeah, that just happened to me too. It must be bad season for water heaters. Oh. And so you may notice, anybody that's paid attention to the show, anytime recently might notice that my background is different than it usually is. I
like the Primus posters though, and it's kind of a nice change of pace. So we're good.
Right. Well, and actually I like shooting against this flat wall. Typically I shoot into a corner of a room and this is just a flat wall. And so I think it actually makes for a nice balance. I actually kind of like it, but my wife will kill me if I leave it this way. But essentially what happened here on our end, at our house, we've got an upstairs and a downstairs, and I've been basically working from home since COVID. And my office borders a utility room at the house that happens to have our water heater in it. And so I guess it's been about 3 weeks ago now, our water heater exploded. I came into my office to find the floor totally saturated with water. And, obviously I have a tremendous amount of like computer equipment and recording equipment and all this crap in there, right? So obviously it was kind of an issue. So that led to what has now been a 3-week long renovation project. And anybody else probably could have handled this in a weekend, but I'm not particularly handy. So I've got to sort of rely on some help. And then just also I'm trying to work. We're trying to manage our kids' lives. We're trying to do everything all at once and do a little renovation. So unfortunately we are not all the way through it. I do just have to throw up one more little coat of paint. And on one wall, just because when we were putting on our floors, we kind of dinged up my walls that were formerly just painted. So now I've got to fix that up a little bit, and then I'll be ready to move this back in there. The only downside is though, and anybody who does any kind of recording or production work will understand the issue. I had the wild hair of putting down sort of a laminate floor, like a Pergo style floor, right? And my room went from sounding okay and not too bad to sounding like a total echo chamber.
Yeah.
And
like you're talking in a bathroom.
And honestly, I'm standing out in this it's kind of like a little living room thing in my house where I'm recording from today, and actually it sounds okay. And so, but in the other room, it is just so booming, echoey. And so, but I haven't had time between shows and stuff to get my gear into that room so I can hear what it's going to sound like. So I'm really nervous to see what happens.
Yeah, I think you might have to pull the trigger on some sound dampening acoustic panels.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Just line it with a rug.
Yeah, I bought some heavy curtains, like some blackout type curtains for the room.
That would work.
that'll probably help a little bit. And then, I've got to put a rug or something down. And that'll be part of sort of the rest of the renovation. I formerly had a giant couch in there that I'm trying to unload now. If anybody in the Salt Lake area looking for a sweet couch, that kind of thing, let me know. I can hook you up. But anyway, we've got this sofa that we've got to sort of unload at this point. And once I get rid of that thing, I'll put a couple pieces of new furniture in there, a chair, maybe a little table or something. And that'll be that. But anyway, that's been our adventure. I'm hopeful, like I said, hopefully I can kind of get back into the room next week, but we'll see.
So anyone that is doing a podcast or, similar type stuff, it is much easier to fix the room and record in a quiet room instead of a reverb or echo chamber kind of room than it is to use a plugin and pull it out. They do make plugins for that, but it never sounds quite right, or at least in my opinion. So if you can get a better sounding room to begin with, then you don't have that issue. And
that's the thing. I mean, it doesn't take much either, right? Like I'm in a pretty big open room, ceilings aren't terribly high, but just a carpeted room. It's nothing special. And this sounds pretty good. You're in just kind of a, an average place too, and you sound great. And so, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to be good, but I think that's why you always hear the stories, especially of like early, people just getting into doing a podcast themselves or whatever. They'll hide in the closet or something so that they have all the clothing and stuff to kind of knock down the sound.
Yeah. So, it's nothing worse than getting a guest that has like this no sound, acoustic, any type of treatment in the room, and it just sounds really echoey and reverby. It's really hard to fix. So anyone that's doing a podcast or being a guest on a podcast, just keep that in mind that your initial recording is critical. So maybe take a quick 5-minute recording sample and listen to it. And if it sounds echoey or horrible, try and do something to change it or maybe go into a different room.
Yeah, no, it's true. Well, and it's funny how much that's true of almost anything, right? I mean, obviously we do a lot of work with, graphic design, with photography and things like that. Like, Photoshop can't fix everything, Pro Tools, whatever, can't fix everything.
Think about your backdrop too.
Yeah.
Like if you have a window and you got sun coming through behind you, it washes you completely out. So try and pick a backdrop that's solid, like Ryan's mentioned earlier, or mine is okay. But, just pay attention to those little things and it'll make your podcast just that much better.
Well, and that's the thing, just to sort of speak of simplicity, it doesn't take a lot to look pretty good and professional. If you're trying to be a podcaster and you want to have sort of some decent production value, we're not, using Hollywood special effects or anything like that for this show, but it doesn't take a lot, right? I have a simple background with some lights. I'm lit from the front and the rear. Mike has sort of a backlight behind him, also a light in front of him to make sure that he's well lit. And then,
and my lights are literally, they're a table lamp and a clip-on light that it's not the best lighting. It could be a lot better. Ryan's done a much better job. He has real lights for it, but I need to pull the trigger and get some.
Well, but I think the point is that, it doesn't require a lot to be good or a lot to be better than most, right? And that's sort of been, I guess, I don't know, an ethos that Mike and I have stood by all these years, right? If you think back to our early days, Mike, even all the way back when we met back at this Cottonmouth Kings concert, whenever that was, 2006 or 2001 or something like that.
It was before you were married, so a long time.
102, maybe something like that. So anyway, but at that time, even, it's not like we were high rollers or anything or had a bunch of dough, but nonetheless, you had the best gear you could afford. And the best gear you could afford at the time was better than most people's gear, right? And so any investment in your equipment will make you look infinitely better.
We would even, as far as just branding goes, like we would order flyers from Club Flyers and ship them, for each concert that we did. It was $150-$200 to get 5,000 flyers, but that's $150-$200 that most other promoters wouldn't do. And so it really kind of sets you apart unless you are like one of the bigger dance clubs or something like that. But any other like smaller level guy back then wouldn't spend the money to get the nice high quality flyers made. And having someone like you design them helped even that much more.
Yep, no doubt. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, and stuff's a lot easier to do now than it was when we got started, when we were doing those kinds of things back in the day. Like, now you could get on Fiverr and probably have somebody do a competent design. It may not be great or amazing or whatever, but it'd be better than most. And, it's that whole rule. I'll probably butcher it, but it's something about, if 20% of something, 80% or more than 80% of the people, something like that.
Yeah.
So I've always joked I only needed to understand about 20% of the guitar to be better than everybody I know. And so,
just
but it's
play Wonderwall. That's all you need.
Yeah, exactly. Get 1 or 2 tracks. That's really all you need. Nobody wants you to go on for, 3 or 4. So if you can get 1 or 2 tracks, that's enough. And, but I think that's true, with a basic podcast production, just to sort of tie this conversation back together, is, it doesn't take a lot better to be better, or better than anybody else. I mean, like a lot of people, we always talk, and Mike and I have been asked about this before, but, there's a version of podcasting that you do with your phone, right? I mean, like podcasting doesn't have to be high fidelity, and if there's anything we've learned from YouTube, like ultimate mega high resolution also doesn't matter, right? I mean, the stuff that is like, super viral, super whatever is not always the best quality stuff. Usually it has more to do with the content. And I think there's a little bit of a lesson in there too, that, while of course quality and stuff is a nice bonus, the content or the show itself or the product itself is really where it's at.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So cool. Well, so let's talk about what you're up to these days, Mike. Spring has sprung, and you're working on a fun new project. And actually, we had pulled you in or off the job so that you could come together here. And I think you and I have talked about maybe doing a little mini series or something, more in depth around what you're working on now. But you mind talking about what you're up to?
Sure. So I've mentioned a few times I started a landscaping company this year, and my first job is a 5-zone sprinkler system with topsoil, laying sod, and doing a hydro seeding for the other half. Like half the house is sod, the other half is hydro seeding, and put a bid together on that. Took a while to figure out how to put a bid together. Had to get permitting through the state and get to be a licensed contractor, had to get insurance to do that. Then you had to go and register with the city. Then you got, every time you do a sprinkler system or any project as a contractor, you got to go get permits done. You got to figure out 811, make sure all your utility lines, everything are marked so that you don't cut the gas line or anything crazy. There's just so many moving parts that I feel like I've jumped into the deep end.
Well, no doubt you're getting a rapid MBA in lawn care.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Although it's interesting. I mean, we're talking about it now because it's happening now. But I mean, really, if you think about it, like what was it, a year ago, 2 years ago that you were working on your rock wall at your place, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like the work you did there was sort of the foundation of what became this.
So I enjoyed the work here. It was kind of like get out, go get some exercise, stay in shape kind of thing. This is timelines. This is other people telling you how they want it, what they want. So
of client services.
Yeah. And it's, there's definitely money in it. I like this. I could make a lot of money doing this, and it's a matter of building a good crew out, getting good clients and bidding correctly. This bid, I definitely underdid the labor, but I did that on purpose because it's kind of my first rodeo, and I wanted to actually calculate the hours that it actually takes to do this size of a project, because working on my own is like 3 hours here, 4 hours there, just kind of do it. This, I need to figure out the man hours so I can calculate what it's actually going to cost. And so I just did a flat rate for my labor this time of $1,500. And I think that I underbid that. But it's okay because I knew that going into it.
Yeah, one of the things I think is maybe the coolest thing, or maybe, if you're looking for teachable moments or things for our audience from this experience is, it really is kind of a tale of resilience, what you're doing, right? You basically, COVID affected everybody in really tough ways. But you as a performing DJ, there are a few careers that were hit as hard as, sort of professional entertainment. Basically all the bars were gone, everything was gone, and I think there's plenty of folks who might just kind of curl up into a ball and sob about it and have a hard time. But really from pretty early on in the Corona stuff, you started talking about this and that this was something you wanted to pursue.
Well, this was my game plan last year when it actually hit. And then Ian hit me up to go to Nome. And so I went there for the experience and for, the paycheck. But when I got back, it was too late in the season to kind of start doing stuff. So I just put it on, the back burner till now. And I honestly think that if I would have stuck around last year and worked it, I'd be, that much further ahead and I'd probably have a lot more jobs lined up. But,
sure. The other thing I think that I like about it so much, or I respect so much about it, and it's because it's been something I've been thinking about myself, is this ability to pivot, and it doesn't mean that you can't ever go DJ again or anything. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing.
I DJ'd this weekend.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. It was my first gig back and it was actually a lot of fun. So, I got my shots awesome. And, I figure I've gone without work for long enough. People are going anyways. I've got my shots. I'm staying in my area and I'm not really socializing that much, but it's time to get back to work. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. So, yeah.
No, I love that. And I think, the point I was trying to make was that, yes, we're allowed to do the things that we love. So for example, you as a DJ, you love music, you love performing, you love doing all that stuff. I'm thrilled to hear that you're still doing it, on top of all this other stuff. But the ability to, I guess, sort of pivot or add on to what you're known for. And this is something I've been dealing with personally a little bit lately because I'm making my first foray into sort of becoming known as an artist, right? Yeah. As somebody who does art for art's sake, not necessarily design for a client, right? Because my whole career has been doing design for a client. And, but I draw and I do some illustration and I do all kinds of stuff. But but it's not what I'm known for. People don't know me for doing that kind of stuff. They just know me as an art director or creative director. And so it's been a bit of a pivot for me, right? And so just like you're leaning into something you found that you enjoyed, which was the landscaping work, I'm trying to lean into this persona of being an artist. And for me anyway, it's been quite difficult to think of myself in different terms. And maybe, maybe this isn't your experience, but it seems to me that you might have sort of something similar where it's like, you're Mike, you're the DJ. Like to think of you as a guy that owns a landscaping company, is a shift, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows you as Mike the DJ, not Mike the landscape guy. So I think I really appreciate or sort of respect what you're doing with that pivot because I feel like I'm just a step or two behind you, even if it's just by weeks in terms of trying to make this new identity happen sort of post-COVID.
Yeah, it's super weird. Like, I guess my whole career, I've always been Mike the truck driver, Mike the valet car parker, Mike the cell phone store guy. Like I've pivoted a bunch, and some pivots have been stupid, and I've lost a lot of money over the years making the wrong pivot. But I've always kind of just bounced back and kept going and tried whatever I could to just do it.
Well, it's the thing that's sort of been in common with both of us, for all these years. It's just that spirit of hustling, right? It's that spirit of working.
Well,
and you're not
me,
looking quick, really. It seems like you're a multifaceted guy, multi-talented guy, and you just sort of lean into whatever way the wind's blowing.
Yeah, for me, it's more. I don't like a job. I don't like clocking in to work at 8 and leaving at 5 and having someone tell me what I have to do or don't do. I've always tried to hustle and do my own thing so I don't have to go to the job, even though I work probably 40 times harder doing my own thing than I would at the job. I don't know. I must be a masochist or something. And like,
Well, and that's the thing, I always look at that too. I mean, basically I haven't had maybe in one or two little stints, but really in the last 15, 20 years, I probably haven't really worked for an employer, I mean, outside of, all my clients and stuff are, I guess, technically my employers, but I mean, I haven't gone to a job. I haven't punched the clock the way you're talking about. And, outside of just a little stint here and a little stint there. So, I mean, I agree with you that it is a masochism thing, especially now. I've been going over my taxes with my CPA so we can file for last year. And it's just, I mean, I feel so incompetent when it comes to that stuff. I just go, this is not what I want to do. I mean, what I want to be doing is creating stuff, or what I want to be doing is drawing, or maybe I should start a painting or something. But instead I'm busy doing this business stuff. And that's not the stuff that's my strength.
Yeah. So like for me, I got to pay sales tax on stuff now. I got to do all this. Like every job has to be, checked off a list of everything that has to be done for each job. And, it's not I'm not good at it, but I know the process. And, yes, a bookkeeper's right around the corner, because this is going to add up and be, a lot more work than I can do just by myself. Speaking of that, I got to take employees on now, which means I have to get workers' comp, which means that's just one more thing to do. And, as a contractor, I can't just pay them under the table. I have to pay them hourly, and I have to do withholdings and all that stuff. So it's a whole nother level of, instead of going and doing a wedding and getting paid probably more than I make on a job like this, doing the wedding. It's a service. You don't do sales tax on service. And so it's, it's a learning curve. There's a lot more moving parts now, and it's fun. I'm enjoying it.
So have you found there to be like any parallels in the type of work you're doing? So, I mean, even though they're totally different things, like in terms of like organization, right? I mean, what occurs to me is, okay, as you're prepping for a landscaping job, you're checking, getting inventory, you're having parts shipped in, you're making sure you have X, Y, and Z, enough soil, whatever machinery, whatever people. But when you were doing clubs, or if you're, working a bigger venue, is, do I have enough sticks of truss? Do I have a light? Do I have, all these different things, right? So I wonder how much it's really different and how much it's actually the same. Can you speak to that yet?
So like a big corporate gig, right? You're doing video, you're doing lighting, you're doing truss, you're doing all sorts of different moving parts. You have to know your equipment and know what you have and know what you don't have, know if you have issues with the cable, this or that, and have it all prepped and staged and ready to go, a couple days in advance, even to the point of programming your light show and setting the mood, the scenes and everything in advance, so that when you show up, you can plug in, set your lights in place and be good to go. This is very similar. To plan out a lawn, for example, you have to figure out the square footage. You have to figure out how many yards of topsoil you need. You have to figure out how many yards of rock you need. You have to figure out what kind of parts you need for the sprinkler system. You have to pick a good spot to put the valve box. And then you have to, there's tons of different things you have to think about that you have to plan in advance. So those are similar. I would say that the client relationship's also similar. Scope creep is a thing. It's already been a thing on this first project. And I foresee it being a thing in the future. And so it's something where I'm going to have to figure out what I will and won't allow and rules and all that stuff. I had to put a contract together for the landscaping. I had to put a contract together for my lighting and audio stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities. It's just different animals. You got to be just as organized for each or the other. But it's one sprinkler parts and the other's truss and lighting. So
yeah. Well, and I think that's a great observation or a great point, is that, I think for a lot of people who might be afraid to make a career pivot or something like that, myself included, I think that that's a good way of looking at things, right? Is that even though I mean, maybe your skills on the ground are totally different, right? Being able to run a backhoe versus being able to run Ableton or something, whatever it is that's your two skills, or in my world, being able to paint a picture versus being able to, create a logo, ostensibly it's the same stuff, right? And this is something that we've explored on this show at, great length, which is this idea that sort of, our creative juice manifests itself in different ways, but essentially we all have sort of the same core stuff. And I think that as it pertains to sort of entrepreneurship or, this sort of career pivot, like the fact is that even though they're totally different, when you look at landscaping versus DJing, for example, the core elements are all the same, right? The organization, how you treat your customers, contracts, billing, all this kind of stuff. I mean, they're much more similar than you might think if you were just looking at them, on paper.
I do know that if 23-year-old me tried to do this landscaping thing right now, it wouldn't have worked. I wouldn't have had the customer skills to be able to talk and communicate. Well, I can't do this because of that. Or, it wouldn't have been the right timing. DJing was the right first move. And then working up to the higher end clients and the weddings, I learned the how to be a business person and how to interact with people.
Well, and that's something that I think we've kind of come across in this show too, as we've interviewed, 200 plus people at this point. I guess like I've used this phrase before and maybe there's a right way or wrong way to say it, but my idea anyway is that it basically took every step we've ever taken to get to where we are today. Right. So there are no right answers. There are no wrong answers, but basically every step was required to get to where you are today. And I think that for me anyway, that's a great way to not live in the past or feel a lot of regret for the way things were, or how come I'm not where I want to be or whatever. I sort of have to look at it in this longer form, like a journey. And I think you just made the great point there. That is this idea that, you wouldn't have been ready any other way. Basically, it required that you do all these steps as prerequisite. Now, maybe if you were going to, looking at it in a college curriculum or something, this isn't the way they would say, oh, you want to be a landscaper? Well, go DJ for 20 years.
Right.
That's probably not the recommendation. But nonetheless, the point is the same, right? I mean, for example, my oldest son, Ethan, is 14. He got a job at Lagoon, which is a big theme park here, kind of like a Six Flags or something. And, he's only able to work a certain number of hours and stuff like that because he's pretty young. But but nonetheless, it was really important to me and his mom that he had an opportunity to work in customer service. Because in our mind, if you've worked customer service, then you can understand what it's like to do, to be the customer, or how you should behave as a customer if you've, had to be on the other side before. And that was my experience when I was a kid. I worked at a little department store for a long time. And that was sort of my thing too, right? Is I had to learn how to deal with people and I had to pick up these practical skills. So same thing, just like going through the DJ route to become a landscaping company. For me to become a creative director or work in advertising, to work in lawn and garden at Shopko probably wasn't the recommended path. But nonetheless, the skills I picked up in having to deal with people and having to deal with problems and have to deal with all those sorts of things, are invaluable.
Yeah. And, growing up, I've always done projects around the house, but my family was the one that would go buy a piece of crap home and fix it up and flip it. So I moved a bunch. I moved probably 13 times before I graduated high school. And each one of those times was one of those things. We'd fix up a house, flip it, sell it kind of thing. And so I've learned a lot as far as, handyman work, landscaping, this and that, but I've never done it as a business. And so going from just doing it on your own to running a business and dealing with clients and orders and making sure you got this right permit and your gravel lined up and to be dropped at a certain time and the machinery, it's completely different animal. It's one of those things that it's a fun adventure for me right now. So we'll see how it goes. I'll get back to you in a few weeks.
I was going to say you're in the honeymoon phase, right? So we'll see how it goes, come midsummer when it's 112 degrees outside and you're busy trying to move stuff around.
So I don't do well with the sun. I've got, look at me. I want to be a landscaper and I don't do well with the sun.
It's those Irish roots, right?
Yeah. So I wear these, this jogging shirt, thin, lightweight jogging shirt. And then I've got gloves on and then I wear this kind of gaiter thing and then my hat. So everything's covered. And we'll see how it is in the middle of summer.
I imagine shifts will get real early or real late.
Yep.
So,
yep.
That's awesome.
So,
well, cool. So let's talk a little bit more about your DJ thing that you did last night. Just because it's cool. I mean, this is really your first big gig back. I mean, how was it?
It was a slower night, which is fine. I didn't want to go into a packed room. It was weird to get back behind the decks. I hadn't, I got to be honest, I didn't even practice the whole time I've been away. I've just kind of been doing other things, and my laptop was set up to edit, and I was just too lazy to pull it down and set up the decks and do everything. So I hadn't really done any of that. So all last week while I've been working outside, I switched from listening to podcasts to listening to, top 40s and what's charting and trying to figure out the new hit songs. And then I'll add them to a playlist that I call Get These Edits. And so when they're in that playlist, I know I got to go and find, that song. So I have it to be able to play. And so
I didn't know how you listen to a playlist of top 40 and survive.
It's horrible, dude. It is the worst. And then finding the one song that's actually good out of 50 of them, it's like, okay, thank you for putting that one out.
Well, I keep thinking, is this just the way like our parents were, right? Like, I mean, so they had the Beatles and our music was just dreck, when it was coming out, our stuff was the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And so I can't decide, is it just we're getting older or does music actually suck?
I think it's a mixture of both, but I think the problem is auto-tune. And the problem is there's a lot of bedroom producers out there like me that think they know a lot. And then they go and get some guy in a room and record them, and they get this somewhat halfway decent track. And then they, it's like, it's too easy to get stuff, like get beats and then rap over it. And then the rap, if you notice, all the young or little or anyone like that can't sing in tune, doesn't have talent vocally. So they end up over pitching the auto tune and singing horribly. And that to me is what sucks. When you get a good rapper, you get, there's a new track called Astronaut in the Ocean or whatever. There's like talent behind it. I enjoy that. I don't mind that, but it's the whiny bullshit that is popular right now that I hate.
Well, and I think it was you that shared something with me that is like, I think it was a YouTube video or something, but it was talking about this sort of algorithmic formula that's in pop music these days.
Yeah.
Where it's basically, this combination or key sequence, sort of this, a series of 8 or 10 notes or whatever it is that, are almost hypnotic for people. So like the music doesn't have to be good. The vocals don't have to be good. Like you're not being judged on that. It's just, can I wiggle to it? Well, and there's sort of a formula for that now.
So like, for me, it's does it have a good beat? Can you actually dance to it? Is it not 60 beats a minute, which is super slow? And then if you play it in the club, it's going to just kill the mood. So you have to double time it to 120, add another kick drum to it, and then kind of liven it up a bit. I don't know. I hate having to play a song that sucks because it's popular. And so I try to avoid, like, I don't even download the shitty songs. That way I can tell them, sorry, I don't have it on my computer.
Sorry, I just don't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, and it's funny, like what you were saying about the rappers, because both my boys are into rap. Right. And so, I hear the latest crap every week. And like, I remember when we were growing up and, again, this is trying to sound like somebody's dad, but, like there used to be like some build, some anticipation, right? You have to wait a year until the new album comes out. Oh, this dropped today. Oh man, I'm going to have to wait another year to get the next album, or, whatever it was. Right. I mean, there was this sort of anticipation that happens. And I would say that like right now, rap music is coming out at such a pace that honestly, I don't know how anybody keeps up.
It's super hard.
And, yeah, I mean, and for the guys who are good and are talented, and I mean, there's an incredible number of like great beat makers and stuff like that, guys that are producing, music and tracks all the time. But like the barrier to entry to become a rapper nowadays or professional rapper is pretty low.
Yeah.
And, and there are a lot of just bad rappers out there. And to your point, I mean, there's so many of them that are wildly popular and they're just not good.
Yeah. It's horrible. I just, the fact that that's what's popular is what kills it for me. I mean, like the last gig I played before COVID, I can't remember what song was hot, but it was one of those annoying ones that I just didn't like. And I was in the middle of a gig, and if you're a DJ, you shut your Wi-Fi off when you're using Serato because it might cause latency issues and problems like that. So I can't download a song and throw it on if I don't have it. And it was one of those ones I didn't download, and this chick just started flipping out on me and cussing at me because I wouldn't play it. And the problem with this particular venue is that the other DJ is a Spotify DJ. He will literally play YouTube videos or Spotify or whatever, just play any request that anyone has. So they're used to just walking up and saying, hey, play this YouTube video. And sure, no problem. And when I come in and I can't do it, they lose their minds. And it's very frustrating for someone like me who really, I spent probably 7-8 hours collecting the new music and finding the good edits and listening to 3 or 4 different versions and picking the one I like, and then get in there and deal with that one rude customer that wants her YouTube video played. It's just really frustrating.
Well, and and I think there's a bigger problem there too, in that, I mean, for people like you, I mean, essentially your art is, DJing, the craft of putting music together. And so when somebody comes in, like, it's the same thing as somebody asking me to make my logo bigger or some nonsense like this. Like, I mean, the point is they've hired you as a professional, right? You're the guy that does music professionally. And yet now maybe you don't have, whatever the, latest remix of Old Town Road or whatever's hot. But at the same point, like, it's your job to be the professional in the room, right? You're the guy that should be trusted to play the music. And I was listening to this group the other day on Clubhouse. I've been listening to a lot of conversations with artists, right, as I'm trying to sort of navigate this art space. And that was one of the things that came up, is that this idea that people ought to come in and critique you on what you should do for your art and how you should paint this, or it would be better if it was like this. And it's like, the reality is, no, you are the professional, right? So in the case of this drunken person, maybe they don't understand, or aren't capable of understanding that they need to back off. But ultimately, we have a real problem in the society where we think that we must give our opinion to everybody, and we don't trust professionals to just be professionals. Like, you wouldn't show up at your doctor's office and explain to him what your problem is. Rather, you go and you wait for him to diagnose you. So in the case of music, I mean, you're playing the music, you should be the one making the tastes, not the other way around. Like, you shouldn't be being influenced by the computer programmer that runs iHeartRadio.
Well, or the one, person that likes this horrible song that thinks everyone else is going to like it because they're 10 shots in and there's no reasoning with them. That's, that you're not going to normally have a client that's like that. It's just the nature of the beast to do working in that environment. And really, that environment, the bars and the clubs, that to me is just paid practice. I mean, it's a decent, it's not wedding money, but it's enough to go out and have a few drinks and play music. And yeah, you have to deal with that kind of thing.
Practice craft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different venues, you don't have that issue. Lots of them, you have your booth off in the back and requests just aren't allowed. And that's the right way to do it, in my opinion. Having the direct interaction and people in your ear at all times doesn't let you think 3 or 4 songs ahead in advance, doesn't let you just plan the night out.
There's a weird line, right? Because I mean, if you went down to Vegas or something, you went to see Armin van Buuren or Steve Aoki or one of these guys, like, you're not chirping in their ear, telling them what song to play. I mean, you might shout it from the crowd or something, but I mean, you're not bothering the DJ really, And so it's funny, this line that, I mean, even like, if you're not an Armin van Buuren, but you're still a professional, right? I mean, of course they should set things up so you can be left alone, so you can actually do the work. I mean, that's what they're paying you to do, is to come in and do the work.
Yeah, and the problem is when in this particular venue, when they have the other guy that will do everything and play everything, that's what they expect. And then when I come in, I'm the butthole. I'm the pain in the butt that they don't want to deal with. Like, why is he so rude? And they don't understand that I'm everything that I'm doing. And it's hard to have that conversation with a drunk person when you have 30 seconds to mix into the next song. And so I've come across as an asshole a few times because I'm playing in these type of venues and they don't understand the way things work, as someone who's actually mixing. So, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it makes sense. And it is hard, I mean, just like, any brand or any business or whatever, I mean, you expect some degree of consistency, right? So if you have this guy who's doing things one way and you do things totally differently, then, I mean, certainly that can create some issues. And I think it's like that, with anything. I mean, if I show up and, I'm taking, well, I mean, I've done this even semi recently, taken over a project for a designer who wasn't quite where they needed to be. And, so they started this project and then I came in to fix it for them. Right. And that prior person, the client was able to kind of chirp at them and do like they do with you. Instead of requesting a song, though, they're requesting a color change or a logo or a photo or something. And then I step in and I go, no, I don't do that. I make those decisions for you. And then once it's all done, then you can comment on it. Like, I'm happy to hear your feedback. But I mean, the reason you brought me in is because somebody else was screwing this up.
Yeah.
And I think there's really something to that, just to that idea of being a professional. Right.
Yeah. And it, I like to interact with people. I like to meet new people at the clubs and hang out and have a shot with them if the timing's right and it's appropriate. But it's when they come up and demand things and are rude and just ill-mannered, that instantly, I don't know, it triggers
changes the whole vibe, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing, if you go and see a band that you love, right? Like, I mean, you and I've been to a million concerts, I mean, when you go to these smaller shows and it's just you and 30 people and the band on stage, of course you want to go up to the singer and say, hey, great job. I love it. But you certainly don't go interrupt their set to have that conversation. Maybe you catch them afterwards or you whatever. I mean, just like you're saying, I mean, they like to hang out too. They like to meet people too. But when they're on stage, they're doing some work professionally. And, maybe DJs don't have the opportunity to, peace out and walk over and just hang out at the bar for an hour or something in the middle of their set.
Never mind.
Well, they're not supposed to. Yeah. And so, but nonetheless, I mean, of course you're an entertainer and a big part of, success in entertainment is being friendly and being accessible and stuff like that, and it's, I think it's really important, but at the same time, they need to allow you, people need to allow you to be a professional in the room too. And, of course you've got the, element of alcohol to deal with when you're working in the bar, which sort of shifts things a little bit. Although I have plenty of clients that do ridiculous crap totally sober too. So, I mean, I don't know. All
yeah.
Might just be
I'm actually looking forward to doing this landscaping thing more, just because of that reason right there. I'm not dealing with drunk people. I'm not dealing with the environment like that.
Although I don't know, maybe you can, mash up the two, start drinking on the job and then you bring alcohol to the landscaping and the heavy equipment and everything else.
Nah,
I mean, it's certainly could be entertaining.
No, I don't want to take on that one. So that's for sure.
Well, especially now that you're insured and bonded and all that stuff, I reckon that might be a violation of some kind of policy.
Just a little bit. And, that's another thing that, like, I got employees, or I will have employees here in the next little bit because I can't keep doing it all myself. Who's to say that they don't pull some stupid shit like that? And my ass is on the line, not theirs. So It's kind of a whole nother thing now. It's like, it's getting real and I like it, so we'll see. I think those are
like big kid pants, man.
Yeah.
Like if you have to start doing that, see, like, I mean, I'm lucky because my contractors are just contractors. They, stuff doesn't work out. I let them go and I never see them again.
Yeah.
But for you, where you can't just, throw somebody on as a 1099 employee or something like that because of the gear and the equipment and all that stuff. It definitely changes the dynamic.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes this first summer. Like, the client I'm working for right now, he's a real friendly guy. I like him. But I told him, I was like, I'm not going to go and take on 20 jobs this summer. I'm going to take on maybe 8, enough that I can get them done myself if necessary. But, I'm not going to scale faster than my learning ability. I want to get this dialed in and figured out, make sure I'm not losing, money on a job or this or that, or, little things that you figure out as you go. I'm going to figure them all out before I scale, and then I'll find a good employee that is working with me and, kind of build from there. But I don't want to go and just take on 20 jobs and half-ass them. I'm one of those guys. They have to be right. So,
yeah. No, well, and I think that's a smart way to approach it. And I mean, you may have had a few in the past, but I mean, it's certainly been a long time since you had like employees or people working for you. And so I imagine, there's a little bit of a learning curve. I think generationally, people are a little bit different now than they once were. I think that there's, a lot of stuff to learn as a leader now, or as a person who runs a business now that, maybe was a lesser deal 15 years ago or something.
Yeah. I'm very it's going to be interesting to see how, if a guy doesn't work hard and I have to let him go, how that's going to go, or find the guy that does work hard, but has limited hours. It's like going to be, it's a whole nother ball game when you're dealing with other people. I used to do, I used to have mobile systems. I would send multiple systems out to multiple events at a time. So I'd have like a school dance over here. I'd have a wedding over here. I'd have kind of like Jeff Jones does it, books 30, weddings in a weekend kind of thing.
This is basically how you scale the DJ business, right?
Yeah.
I mean, essentially you have to start having people kind of go out in your stead using your equipment or whatever, the same way that like a band brings an opening act or something. Like you have to start sending people out on your behalf. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I would equate, what I'm going to have to do with employees with the landscaping. But back then I had to deal with it with guys that I would subcontract out, whether their gear's up to par for the gig, whether they're actually talented or not, whether they have good mic skills, whether, what type of this guy's good for middle schools. This guy's good for weddings. This guy's good for nightclubs. You just have to know who is good for what, and then make your judgment, and send them to that gig or not at all kind of thing.
And I think that'll be true in your landscaping business too, right? I mean, people might look down at it and think that, oh, well, it's just, a guy with a shovel or whatever, but it's not that, No. I mean, you need a guy with all kinds of great skills. I mean, if he encounters your client, for example, I mean, he needs to be able to be sociable enough.
Yeah.
He maybe doesn't handle the business, but he needs to represent the business.
Well, and, in reality, I don't want to be out busting my back next summer. I want to have other people busting their backs that are hard workers that I'm paying them to work hard for. I want to be out building new clients and bidding the next job and making sure that all the ducks are in a row so that my guys can come in and do the work. And to do that, you have to have people that are competent, and you have to, trust them and trust that they're not going to go sleep in the truck for 2 hours and then do, an hour of work and just drop the ball. You just, it's stuff you got to deal with. So, yeah.
Well, and I mean, like a good example of this is I was doing work for a unnamed landscaping company at one point. And one of the things they had me do is I went and I did kind of a quick audit of sort of, to get the temperature of what people thought of them. Right. So I was looking at, Google reviews and all these kinds of different websites and stuff where people could put reviews. And one of the raps on this particular company was that they would and I'm sure leadership didn't even know that this was going on, but basically they would send out 2 employees and then each of them would charge for the time, right? So let's say, just for simple math, it was $50 an hour to employ this company to come do work on your property. Mm-hmm. The part they left out was that it was $50 per human we send there.
Oh my goodness.
And so, so you as a person would say, oh, okay, well, $50 an hour, I can afford that to have you come in and mow the yard or whatever. And then they'd get a bill for $150 an hour because there were 3 people on site.
Yeah.
And so this kind of thing, is like one of those things to be aware of, right? Is just to be cognizant of how people, or set expectations and then live up to them.
Yeah. And so like that's a great, this very first job I've run into, like there's scope creep that's on this one. There was the property was supposed to be graded and ready to go, where all I'd have to do is drop topsoil and rake it. And when I got here, there's rocks all over the place, like Idaho rocks everywhere. They didn't grade underneath a certain section of the porch because their equipment couldn't get under there, but my equipment could, because I'm on one of those little rider. It's not made for like digging and moving large amounts of dirt. It's made for moving topsoil and then, getting it in place. And so there was a whole section that needed to come up like 3 feet. And I had to go across 2 lots, get the soil he had for that, and bring it back and drop it. And that took a full day of work that I hadn't equated for, but I'm going to eat it because it's my first client. And, I want to have good terms with him. He's already referred me to another person, which is good. But that's one of those things that you learn by doing jobs like this. Is next time, if someone asks me to do something like that, yeah, I have the tool. But the other person who's supposed to do the grading needs to leave the dirt in a closer location where I'm not wasting 4 or 5 hours of labor just back and forth to bring that.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier having to set up contracts and stuff, and maybe that's a great place, or something that you might include in a future contract that you wouldn't have known to put in had you not done this job. Right now you can say, well, if I show up and the situation isn't as promised, if the area isn't graded the way it's supposed to be graded or whatever, well, then we'll charge X number of dollars per hour to do that extra work.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But it could be pre-established, right? Because pulling the rug out from under your client probably would have been the wrong move, right? It's difficult. It sucks for you, but you stuck to your word. You agreed to do the job for this price. But in future contracts, it would make a heck of a lot of sense to have some sort of a rider for that says, hey, look, if you say it will be this way and it's not that way when I get there, I'll clear this with you, but I'm going to have to charge you for the extra work.
Yeah. And it's hard to have that conversation and know how much extra work that is without having done that with that machine before. I didn't know it would take a whole day essentially, just to move that much dirt. And mainly it's because I haven't used that small of equipment before. I'm usually in a Bobcat. If I had a Bobcat, I could knock that out in no time, but this thing, it only goes so fast because you're riding behind it and you can't haul ass, because if you're standing on it and turn too sharp, it'll throw you. And so they regulate the speed, which slows everything down. And it just took forever moving dirt. On top of that, the machine broke down 3 times. And this is actually a really good learning lesson for people who might be wanting to get into this kind of job. If I owned that equipment and it broke, I would have to fix it or pay someone to fix it. Whereas because I rented it, it cost me $200 to rent it for the day. It broke down. They sent a mechanic and they fixed it and brought another piece of equipment. And then the second time it broke down. So the track came off. It's got a track, and if you turn wrong, the track would fall off. And that happened twice. And on the third time, the axle broke on that track. And so it ended up being this big kind of, just calculate in my head how much time it would take me to do this job, and figure out, just try and figure it out. And then you have breakdowns in it. That changes everything. So I had lots of downtime because of that, but I had other stuff I could work on, which is good. I don't know.
And I guess that word to the wise, spring for the Bobcat.
No, because this had a trencher on it. And so I could dig the trenches to lay the pipe and spread the soil with it for one price. And so that's why I went that route. But had I known that I would move that much dirt, then yes, I would have paid for the Bobcat and had the client.
Then
pay
you
for
also
that.
would have priced accordingly. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
it makes sense. Well, and I think you're right. I think there's probably for a landscaping business like that, I imagine there's a certain scale you have to be at where it starts to make sense to own the gear. So and I suppose that happens when you can hire a mechanic.
That's 100% it is how much. So I actually sat down with Robert Klinkenberg. I think that's his name. Klinkenbeard. Yeah. Since we had him on the podcast, I had like a personal one-on-one kind of just chat with him and was asking him some questions about this and was like, hey, should I buy, a Bobcat and a track hoe and a trailer and all this other stuff, or should I just rent every time? And he recommended renting because what that very reason is the maintenance on it alone. You end up having to have a full-time guy just to take care of the equipment. And then you also have to maintain the equipment. So if the track breaks, that's $1,000. Then you have to insure the equipment. Then there's a lot of different things that add on to each piece of equipment that you buy and use. That's another thing. That's another bill. That's another this, that's another that. Whereas if you can go and pay a flat rate that is going to be your expense to use this piece of equipment, then it shows up, you use it, it goes away. You don't have to store it. You don't have to maintain it. You just have to put more gas in it. And that's the way to go, Yeah,
no, I think you're right. I'm just even replaying what you were talking about with this particular instance where, the tractor broke down on you 3 times and once a broken axle, on top of the thrown, tracks. And I don't know, maybe the thrown track is an easy repair, but by the time
I thought I could do it myself. I tried to take the sprocket off and put it back on and, think it through myself, see if I could get it done before, calling it in, because it happened over the weekend and they were closed. And so I had a day of not being able to use the said equipment because the track was off. So I tried to fix it myself. Couldn't figure it out. Watched a YouTube video, realized I didn't have the parts that I needed to do it, and just started working on other projects. So,
yeah. Well, and if you either had to employ a guy or if you had to take care of those repairs yourself, the cost of doing that would probably be near the cost of buying one of these things used. And, so it's pretty incredible because if you owned that equipment, you'd be way upside down on the job.
Yeah. I would have lost a lot of money, but instead it was a fixed rate and I didn't have to worry about, breaking my back trying to get this fixed or, renting another piece of equipment to pick it up and put it on the trailer. There's a lot of things that could go wrong if you own it that add up versus renting it, and, granted, if I start doing a lot of lawns and I have a couple routes with that, I'm going to own that machine. That's a machine that you can maintain yourself. You can take care of minimal stuff, but a $100,000 Bobcat. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, hey, we're getting to the end of the hour. I guess, cool catching up. I'm glad we had some time to just kind of BS.
Yeah. It's been different.
Yes. Next week. And, so glad we had a little opportunity to do this, but, secretly Mike and I had talked a little bit about doing sort of an extended series, where we talk, over 2 or 3 episodes or more, sort of about just all the process that Mike has been going through, trying to get set up as a contractor and, learning new software and learning how to bid and all these different steps. And I think it could be really valuable for a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs just coming up or people making sort of career pivots. So, maybe Mike and I'll get our crap together and make that happen. But nonetheless, I'm stoked. We got to just kind of sit and BS for an hour.
Yeah, we haven't done it for a while. We need to do a barbecue at some point. Actually, here's what we're going to do. I've got some friends in Salt Lake that like paella, and we need to do that. I
have a massive paella pan.
Yeah, so if you're down, I'll bring the rabbit.
Perfect. Well, yeah, we'll figure it out because I've not used that paella pan since Christmas. That's a different story, but yeah, I would love to do that. That'd be awesome. So cool, man. Well, I guess thanks so much. I mean, do you want to make a plug? I don't really have anything to say. I guess if you want to check out my art and my NFTs and support me as an artist,
I've actually enjoyed your art.
Check out everything at ryanrogar.com. You can buy the NFTs on OpenSea.com. Links and everything are at ryanrogar.com. Though
and you're doing full prints, right? Too.
Yep. Now I'm offering prints. That's kind of a whole new world for me. I found a shop nearby that could do them. So I'm going to do prints. So this first series, it's called the Barong Collection. Basically, there's this old Balinese figure, folklore critter that's called Barong, and he's basically this spirit or a guy that sort of wards off evil spirits, and he's terrifying looking, but he actually means well. And so anyway, I've taken and sort of mashed him up with different sort of pop culture critters. So I won't say their names, but the mouse, the dog, and the duck are available now. So you can go check those out. That's series 1. We have some prints. We have one-off NFTs and all kinds of stuff available right now. So go to ryanrogar.com to check that stuff out. It's a lot of fun, even if you just want to take a look. And there will be more to come. I
guess, I haven't thrown out my website in a while, djontic.com, ONTIC.
You want people to check out the landscaping biz? Do you have a link for that?
Yeah, it's MTN, like mountain, mtnviewlawn.com. So if you want to stay, I do like time-lapse videos of projects I'm working on. So if you want to check that out, it's on there.
Yeah. So if you're in Southeast Idaho and you need a great landscaper, call Mike. Or if you want to pay a ton for a project and fly him to wherever you live to do it, he'd probably be open to doing that too. But I imagine it'll be more expensive than you anticipate.
So here's a net. We'll end with this. This is just something that I wanted to, if I can find it. All right. So check out this pen. I don't know if you can see it.
You doing magic for us right now? Ooh, I saw that on Instagram.
So this is Mohawk Metal Supply. This is my cousin makes these metal pens that are indestructible, and they're handmade. Like if you look at he's full on cutting that out and making these pens by hand. And so what I'm going to do, this is like sneaky stuff, right? He's got his logo on it, Mohawk Mountain Supply. And then he does these, I don't know if you can see it, but it's numbered. So this one is number 11. But I'm going to have him make custom Mountain View lawn ones. And for every job that I do, they're going to get a pen that's numbered for that. So this one, I obviously have number 1 because I did my yard first. And then client number 2 is this guy. And then it's just going to be a thank you present, this indestructible pen that's numbered with their job.
Awesome.
So
no, that's sweet. I actually saw those. I saw some ads from those guys on Instagram. Maybe the algorithm was favoring that because of you. I didn't realize you're connected to those dudes. But yeah, no, I had every grand intentions of picking up 1 or 2 of those on my own because I think those are awesome.
I just remember the guy, the Cutco guy, that the real estate agents would get the engraved knives from him.
Yeah.
Like they're using the knife every day. It's got your logo on it. That's kind of my thought. It's an expensive pen. It's like $60, but it's a business card that he's going to use every day and remember Mountain View Lawn Care. So that's kind of the thought. I think that's great.
It. What's the link for those pens if people want to buy one?
Just Google.
Company
yeah, I do. It's Mohawk Metal Supply, and I'm sure that is. I actually have the link here. It is. MohawkMetalSupply.com.
Easy enough. Cool. So yeah, check out those pens. Like I say, I've seen the ad on Instagram. They're actually pretty sweet. I want some, and yeah, go get one for yourself.
Yep. Shout out TJ.
Yes. Killer. Tell him Mike sent you.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. Well, man, it's been awesome, and we'll do it again some other time. So thanks to everybody who tunes in this week, every week, as always, and we'll see y'all next time.